today we are opening a super important topic that extremely many students of Norwegian underestimate. And that is the single biggest danger that there is in Norwegian courses. This is probably not what you think, because very many people think that it's a little dangerous to pick a Norwegian course. It might not be the ideal course. The teacher might not be as proficient as they want them to be, or as attentive, or understand their questions. Sometimes these dangers are real, but very many courses are actually in the okay category. I would say most Norwegian courses that I've ever seen, and I've seen quite many in different positions, as a student, as a teacher, obviously, as a colleague of very many other teachers, as a supervisor as well. So I've seen really many Norwegian courses, and the vast majority of those I have seen were in the okay category. Some were really good, most were okay, very few were actually really bad, right? So the danger of hitting on a really bad course is not as big as many of the students fear. However, there is a bigger danger than your course being suboptimal, and the danger is over relying on the course. So this is something you have control over, and it might sound a little controversial, because at the end of the day, the course is there to teach you Norwegian, right? Well, I have reservations to that. That's the point. That if we over rely on the course and we like, okay, this course is here to teach me Norwegian, that is where the trouble begins. This is the sole biggest problem that students have with Norwegian courses, that their expectation isn't correct, that they rely on the course way too much. And the same goes for teachers. Very many students are looking for a teacher as a savior. I need somebody to teach me the language, right? And the fact is that the only person who can learn anything is you, right? The teacher can explain things to you, they can lead you, they can present things to you in the right order, maybe, or in a beneficial order. They can support you. If the teacher is really good, then they can coach you in a way. That's why I prefer to think of myself as a Norwegian coach, because very often people need quite a lot of coaching on how they should be thinking of things, how to interpret these feelings that pop up all the time with the learning processes, right? How to cope with these, how to study optimally, right? How to do these things. But this is still something that's in the sphere of guidance, right? And in the sphere of helping you. But still, you are the one who's doing all the learning, all of it. So the point is, your teacher is there to help you, to explain things to you, to drip feed things to you if necessary, to show you the way. But if you don't take it, if you don't learn it, if you don't sort it yourself, if you don't take responsibility, then you are wasting your money on your teacher. All right? So the magical ingredient always is you. And I see this happen all the time with Norwegian courses and with private teachers, that students would very readily hand over their power and their responsibility to the course provider, or to the textbook, to the teacher. And very many students believe that whatever is there in the textbook is sufficient to cover a level. Yeah, it might be sufficient to pass the exam if you learn everything that's in the textbook, but it won't be sufficient to satisfy you and to cover your real life needs, right? So this is the deal. This is very important. So you have maybe already discovered that it's going to be a bit of a pep talk today, but sometimes I think we need that. So let's do it. And let's start with the idea of a Norwegian course. Like, what is it? What is even a Norwegian course? Very many students have this unrealistic idea that a Norwegian course is a vehicle from start to that particular level, right? But as a teacher of very many courses of a standard format for various providers. I see this all the time. Some students come, they take the course, they use it as a tool, and they emerge on the other side, and they have risen up a level, or maybe they have risen up more. They have learned many things on the course that I never told them as a teacher, right? Because they are making connections. It's about the connections happening in your brain ultimately. So, and it's you who is making these. Sometimes they kind of make themselves, right? But it's your conscious study, and that is combined with whatever is in there from before. So we always confront the new information that we're taking in, right, with the previous information that's in there already. And it all sits on our mindset, it all sits on our beliefs about ourselves and about the world and about learning languages. So all these parts are very important, and they reside in you. Yeah. So when the teacher says one thing on the course, all the students in the class hear something different. And that's a fact. It's not a fault of the teachers or of the students. It's just a fact that when the teacher teaches something, it doesn't translate into learning. Almost none of the students will learn the thing that the teacher said, right? Some of the students will learn much more, and some of the students will learn nothing because they weren't listening, or they had a conflicting belief in themselves. They maybe thought that, okay, I am not a person who can understand difficult grammar, and they interpreted it as difficult grammar, and therefore their system shut off and they learned almost nothing. Another person who was maybe linguistically more apt, or had this experience from before, or believed in themselves, learned more than what the teacher said, because they suddenly connected something in their brain. I was like, oh, that's it. And all the learning happening. And most people will learn maybe approximately as much as the teacher has given out, but not necessarily the same, right? Sometimes the teacher is talking about something, and if you're like, okay, this is a bit too overwhelming for me, but you have the choice. You can shut off, or you can be like, all right, this is a bit too much, but I'm taking these bits and I'll focus on them. And that's what I can do. And I get the picture, so I know where these fit in a way, right? And that's fair enough. And you have learned a lot, and you have taken responsibility, and you have used your power. You see what I mean? So whatever the teacher teaches on a course is probably pretty standard. Yeah, they follow the textbook. But whatever you learn doesn't need to reflect what the teacher has taught as much as you might think. Yeah. So this is a good thing to observe as well happening, that now, just now, I am learning, and I'm actually learning something different from what the teacher has been saying, because I connected. And this is very valuable learning, and it's yours. And that's how it happens. This is a good to know, that teaching doesn't equal learning. It's a good to know for teachers and for students. And it's a good to know to readjust our expectations when we are taking a course. The same, and probably even more, goes for textbooks, because sometimes we even have this fear of skipping a unit in the textbook, because we feel that if I skipped this one, my knowledge of Norwegian would be lacking. And sometimes we rely on the textbook so much. The textbook has so much authority for us because it has the level label printed on the cover. Maybe I don't know why this is, but I have it too, to a certain degree, or I had it much more than I have it now. Obviously, I teach without textbooks when I teach in my own courses, and when I teach privately. We don't use textbooks unless somebody really wishes to use one or needs to use one because of some other purposes. But you really, really do not need it. And sometimes the textbook would even make it slower for you. But sometimes it's just hard to see, right? We tend to believe that whatever is there in a textbook is important, and whatever isn't there isn't important. And we over rely on the authority of the textbook so much that we are in a way paralyzed. We feel like, okay, maybe I should practice this particular thing because this is what I really need right now. But isn't that cheating? We feel like cheaters when we skip the textbook and rather do something that feels easier and more relevant. And we're like, no, 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 but I should finish the textbook first. And then I can do these extras. But no, my friend, these aren't any extras. This is the stuff you need, yeah? So you do not need a textbook. It's a good tool if you are using it, but if it's using you, then that's not the right game you're playing. And very, very often, people tell me things like, okay, so I need to speak to my colleagues in the lunch break, but like we're not learning to do that on the course. And to that, I say, like, of course, you're not, because these courses aren't designed to do that. Maybe if you take a conversation course that has this in the description, right? That will teach you how to lead the small talk, will take the small talk topics. Small talk topics are quite unpredictable, or some of them are, right? It's the weather, it's the what do you have in your lunchbox, what's up with the kids. These are maybe predictable and you can start there. But true small talk or true friendly conversation is very often revolving around really random topics and very often about your hobbies, especially if they're a little interesting. And that means that they're probably not covered by the textbook or by your course, right? All these public courses or from courses from private providers, but available to a very broad audience. All of these are very general. So they would follow a very general textbook. In the higher levels, they would typically get quite heavy or heavily leaned into social studies, because that's what the Norwegian textbooks do for some reason, right? This combination of Norwegian and social studies. You could have the combination of Norwegian and technologies, or you could have Norwegian and biology, Norwegian and psychology, right? Why is it social studies? Well, there might be some reasons for that that are not linguistic or, strictly speaking, pedagogical reasons, right? It has nothing to do with learning languages as such. It's a content and language integrated learning. It is, but you could combine with any other field that you like. So there is nothing, in a way, necessary about these topic choices. You could skip half of the textbook and take different topics and learn most of the same general vocabulary through those, right? But we feel that if I am to learn it, then somehow the course must teach it to me. And again, well, no, you can still use the course. If you feel that most of the topics are hugely irrelevant to you on the course, you should switch the course or maybe find private lessons or do it in another way, right? It's in a way not the course's fault. And I'm not saying it's your fault either, but the idea here is really to empower yourself to recognize what's happening on the course. How does it fit into the puzzle of your own Norwegian learning? Because again, very often students would equal their learning process to the textbook and the course, and maybe plus homework, right? But only the homework assigned from the course. And all the rest is a bit like, oh, and as a bonus, I did this or that. When in reality, the rest, the bonuses, that's your learning. That's it. And the course is just a little part of it. It's a tool in your hand, but the hand is yours, right? Another thing that I would really love to speak to here is what I see extremely often in these various Norwegian learning groups. There are a lot of these on Facebook, and I'm sure other places as well where I am not as active. And every once in a while, I would say probably every week, somebody pops into a group like that and they're like, hi, I'm new here. Please, someone teach me Norwegian. And I'm always like, poor you. All right. This mindset is so bad for learning a language. It's so bad for learning anything. It's giving your power away just like that. It means like, I don't know what to do. I'm new here. Do anything to me. Just make me know the thing. And it's possible that these students mean it in another way, but some of them probably mean it like that. Like, I'm lost. Just kind of help me out somehow. But the thing to realize here is that nobody can teach you Norwegian. It's not possible. People can explain grammar to you, right? They can explain the process to you. Most people don't do that. Most people will explain the grammar and vocabulary to you. You can call this teach you the grammar and vocabulary. Teach as in give you a lecture, right? And give you an opportunity to practice, maybe correct your mistakes. But learning a language, learning Norwegian, is quite complex. Nobody can just sit with you and make you know it. It's not possible, right? And I know this. I've been a teacher for very many years, and I have worked one on one with very many people. And I know the difference between somebody who takes responsibility and takes the process in their own hands. And they're like, okay, these are my questions. I'm trying, I'm progressing. Explain this to me one more time. I forgot this. Can we take this, right? And it's not like people would be bossing me around at all. That wouldn't work. But there is this sense of, in a way, being the boss of the process. Is their own process, right? And I, of course, recommend the best strategies based on my experience and my expertise. But sometimes some things don't work for some people. And they will tell me, okay, look, I have tried this and I don't like this kind of movie, for example. I don't like this kind of method. Can we do something a little different? And yes, we can. Yeah, there is flexibility in this. And obviously, some processes work better than others. And I will tell people that. But I still have let them decide what they will do, right? And I think it's a good thing if you hire a teacher, or if you hire a coach, or if you follow a course. I think it's a good thing by default to do what you are advised, because very often the advice is actually good. Yeah, you are hiring a teacher who you have maybe read some testimonials for, you trust their expertise. That's why you hired them to coach you. So it's a clever thing to do, to follow their advice. On the other hand, if the coach tells you like you must do as many hours a day or whatever, and now you have this job, you have the kids and whatever, you need to talk to your teacher about that, right? Not like finding excuses, but more like, fitting the methods into your own life. And again, you can complain to your mother-in-law and be like, my teacher is telling me this or that, but they don't understand. No, your mother-in-law is the wrong person to talk to. Talk to your teacher, right? Or maybe find another one if they won't listen. I'm new here, please teach me something, doesn't work. Because what is it that you want them to teach you? Yeah. And this is something I work on in my courses with my students quite a lot, is that I lead them to ask me questions. Very often, students are waiting for these servings of wisdom. And very often, these servings of wisdom, that's grammar and that's vocabulary lists. And I do offer that as well, but I always have my students ask questions. I always make Q&As, or what is it you're wondering about, prominent part of my work with students, because what I have seen as a correlation in my courses is that students who think for themselves, who go through the material, who analyze it for themselves, let the connections pop up in their brain. Because if you don't give it a thought, then you won't make any of these new connections. And it's about the new connections that you are making, not the grammar box that's there in the textbook that you don't necessarily understand or consider relevant. That's not making very many new connections. But if you're like, okay, I'm reading this text, and here there is some kind of something that looks like something else, but it's quite different, and I wonder why. And then you go to your teacher, or to your teacher on your course, or to your private teacher, or to whoever, and you ask about this thing, and you get an answer. That's when a lot of learning happens in your brain. And it's so much more valuable than a random grammar fact that you just read somewhere. So if somebody is gonna just teach you Norwegian, serve you everything, and be like, okay, do this and learn this, and you will know Norwegian. Maybe you will, and maybe you won't, right? So even if you get the best teacher in the world, they can only do 50% of the work, yeah, or probably less with languages. You have to do the work. They can lead you, they can show you the ways. If it's good, and this is not usually the case in group courses, even though it can be, they can teach you learning strategies and explain to you, for example, if you have some blocks or some psychology going on, they can explain to you what's happening if they have education in language learning as such, not only Norwegian grammar. This is great, but still, the learning is happening within you, in your own head. Last word today, not only is the learning happening inside your own head and not in your teacher's head and not on the curriculum page of your Norwegian course, the learning is also happening in your body. There are a lot of things happening not in your intellect, but also in your emotions and in your feelings. For example, when you are able to work actively with your imagination and put yourself into situations where you could be using the language, as in when there is a role play on your Norwegian course, if you're able to work on this level as well, it will work for you like magic. If somebody else is just kind of using the same phrases as before, not putting in the effort and not putting in this inner effort of putting themselves in the situation, in their imagination, in their physical feelings, they will not reach the same results, right? So it's about the body as well as the mind. On top of that, we have a lot of emotional blocks going on sometimes as adults. A lot of people have this with language learning. You can let me know under, if you want, if you notice some things like that, that when you try to speak or when you try to learn some particular aspect of the language, like the grammar, for example, or like listening materials, that you would have these physical reactions somewhere in your body, like this kind of subtle states of panic or whatever it is, right? Sometimes we feel this physically. This is very important to work through as well, so that you're not wasting your energy. And some people have done this work. Some people were lucky and never had to do this, right? And some other people just shut off or reduce their capacity, or their capacity for learning is reduced because of these feelings popping up when they attempt it or when they try to speak. And another thing with your body is that speaking a language involves a lot of muscle stereotypes around your mouth, around the movable parts of your speaking apparatus. And again, this is something that most Norwegian courses do not touch upon at all. They just show you the shape of your lips for the maybe, but that's it. But putting the grammar correctly in place in speaking, for example, that's dependent on how you move your muscles, in which sequence your speaking muscles would move. And if you work with this part consciously, then again, you will reach much better results. You will speak more correctly, more fluently. It will be more easy for you. You will feel more confident. A normal course will not teach you this. But then again, is it the fault of the course? It's not on the curriculum of that course. So you knew you were buying the course without this part, right? And you can do it yourself, or you can hire somebody else who will teach you how to do it, and then you can do it yourself. But again, students who work with it, who take the modeling from the textbook, from the listening exercise, from the teacher, and then instead of maybe panicking that they cannot do it, they repeat it and they train their muscles. They recognize this, yeah. And if you sometimes panic, that's okay. Very many people do. And I very well know what this is about because I have this in other areas of my life. I was talking to a student of mine just yesterday about how I do my tax return. You know, like I spend a lot of time panicking. Then I call my accountant. Then we are done within an hour. But sometimes I just need to call my accountant, you know. And this is what a good teacher can do for you as well, or what a course can do for you. You can ask and you can get help, but you are the fixer, right? I could just be panicking all the time and miss my deadline. Or I can spend some time panicking, then I can book an appointment with my accountant and be like, Okay, I can't seem to be able to do this thing myself. I need your help. And she'll coach me how to do it and she'll help me. But I take responsibility. I don't expect her to do this for me. Or sometimes you can hire people to do things for you. A tax return, I could actually hire somebody. This accountant of mine is more of an accounting coach, right? So that's what she does. She explains and she helps. But I take the responsibility for my own tax return. If I make a mistake, it's on me and all that stuff, right? But I recognize that it's better to get good help than to panic. But I know what the panic is about, so there is no shame in that. We just need to know about it and to work with it and to take the responsibility. I do not expect my accounting coach to make me love and understand taxes just like that, you know? But I can ask her questions. I take the responsibility for asking the questions, right? For booking the appointment, for taking the step. And I think this is the same in the body related part and in the intellect and the mindset related part of language learning, of learning Norwegian. It's always you who's making the connections or to whom the connections happen, but still it's you who chooses how you will expose yourself. If you will consume 2 hours of Norwegian input every day, then you'll have more connections popping up, right? They will pop up by themselves, but you have prepared the conditions. You put yourself in the right situations. You put on the TV, you put on the headphones, you chose it, right? And the same with the course. You can use it very well. And typically, students who go through the very same course have very different results. And yes, some of it goes towards the different aptitudes that they might have for languages, but very much of it goes towards their mindsets and how much responsibility and power they took over their learning.